So today we are getting into Prince Harry's memoir, Spare.
And there has been just a phenomenal amount of noise around this book.
So many headlines. And our mission here is really to cut through all of that, to look past the spectacle.
And pull out the core insights about identity, about trauma, and the moral costs of the modern media machine.
So where do we even begin, I guess, with the title itself?
I think you have to. It's the central paradox of the whole story.
Yeah.
How can someone born into, well, arguably the most privileged position on earth,
Right. The ultimate privilege.
feel so fundamentally expendable?
That is clear. The title Spare. It isn't some clever metaphor he came up with later.
No, not at all. It was a social script. He was literally told from childhood, you are the spare, a backup in case something happens to the heir, his brother William.
Which is just a brutal way to frame a childhood.
It is. And the book presents it as a case study in social roles. He analyzes how that label shaped everything, his self-worth, the family dynamics. It basically normalized inequality within the family.
And it raises a question for you, listening to this. Outside of royalty, in your own life,
In a workplace, in a family,
who gets cast as the essential heir and who's seen as the disposable spare? And how does that kind of script justify how people are treated?
and that feeling of being expendable, it connects directly to the next huge theme,
Trauma.
specifically the loss of his mother, Princess Diana. The book is just. It's haunted by this loss he calls grief that never got to grow up.
Such a powerful phrase.
It is. He describes walking behind her coffin as a little boy in front of the whole world
I think we all remember that image.
and feeling completely blocked from actually processing that pain for
Yeah,
decades.
And that's where the institution comes in, right? The whole upper lip culture.
Exactly. Mental health experts would see this as a really vivid example of prolonged or complicated grief. That institutional stoicism meant the trauma had nowhere to go. It just froze and became part of his identity.
So when he finally seeks therapy, it's not presented as a weakness.
No, it's framed as an ethical responsibility, a duty to finally heal that frozen trauma.
Okay, so you have unprocessed grief and this demand for absolute silence. That feels like the perfect setup for the next major focus,
The media.
which he calls a predatory ecosystem. Now, some critics say he's just blaming the press, but the book claims the palace itself played a role.
A huge role. This is key. He portrays the British tabloids as working in coordination with palace officials. He alleges a culture of coordinated spin, leaks from staff.
So not just an outside force.
No, an inside job, in a way. He describes a system where certain individuals, especially women marrying into the family, are actively fed to the media.
To protect other, more senior members.
That's the claim. It's a kind of sanctioned character assassination presented as public relations. It's a primary source account of how a spectacle is manufactured.
Which leads us then to the book itself, the act of writing it.
Telling your own story is a moral act.
Right. He's trying to reclaim his own narrative from the tabloids and those palace briefings.
But memoir is complicated territory. It's always contested. His act of telling his truth inevitably collides with other people's truths.
Especially family members who are named but can't, or just choose not to, respond in the same public way.
Exactly. So the ethical question shifts. It's not about being objective, because no memoir is. It's about whether the act of witness is responsible, given that it's always subjective.
So when you boil it all down, the essence of Spare is what? A choice.
A painful choice, I think.
Yeah.
Choosing personal safety and dignity over inherited status and public approval. It's an act of radical boundary setting.
At a huge personal cost.
We've covered the family hierarchy, the media ecosystem, the grief. It's a story about the cost of staying silent versus the cost of speaking out.
So our final thought for you to explore is this. When does personal truth-telling become a necessary correction to a dominant narrative?
And, on the other hand, when can that very same act become a new form of injustice to those who are written about, but who can't or don't respond in kind?
That's the core tension, and it's something you have to weigh for yourself.